Hello, you're listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs, the podcast where I speak to bands about what they've got up to between going on tours, between making records. And today I'm squeezing in an episode with Norman Blake of Teenage Fanclub. They've just released a new track, I Left a Light On, and they're on tour across the UK and Europe over the next couple of weeks. So that's why I'm squeezing in an episode now. I've not edited it at all, which is a first for 101 Part-Time Jobs. If there's any dodgy bits, you can write into me. If there's any dodgy bits, I do apologise. All the same, it is Norman Blake, so who really minds? Cheers for listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs. This is Norman Blake of Teenage Fanclub. Cheers. Not at all. Thank you so much for doing this the morning after the Glasgow show.
Oh, no problem at all. Now, Giles, would you mind if I can make a bit of noise for about 30 seconds while I'm staying at my folks' place here and they've got a bean to cup coffee machine and it makes a lot of noise. But if you can bear with me for 30 seconds, I can get myself a coffee.
Absolutely. Coffee away.
Okay, no worries. I'll just wait a second here. And you can hear it's very, very loud. It is great coffee. I'll say that, but it's here we go. It's the preparation there. And you'll hear the beans being ground any second. There you go.
Very good.
Beans being ground.
Those blades sound quite sharp.
Oh yeah, they get a lot of use, I tell you that. But hang on a second, there it goes.
Whoa.
Coffee being generated. It takes another 10-15 seconds and we should be in good order.
Is it a button press? Is it going to do it for you?
It does everything for you, yeah. You just kind of dial in the strength of the coffee and the volume that you want, and then it organises it all for you.
Wow.
Yeah, really nice, pretty good machine. Something my folks invested in. So,
is it an espresso that you're taking? What is it? A long black?
No, it's a long black. Yeah, it's that one of those. And it does espresso though. It does, it does all sorts of stuff. It's got a frother and everything too, so it's a pretty sophisticated machine. But anyway, now it's not going to stop, and there we are. And I've got my coffee.
Brilliant.
All good. How's the microphone from this end? I'm only using the phone mic. Is it okay?
Absolutely fine enough.
Oh, great.
Definitely.
Good stuff.
Yeah. I like making my coffee the night before, putting it in the fridge, and then cold coffee is my favourite in the morning.
Oh, I like it too, actually. Yeah, I could definitely go for that.
It's like a splash of water in the face.
Yeah, or you can't be. I tell you what, it's very important when you're on tour. I've got one. We've got an espresso machine arriving this morning here. I'm in charge of the tea and coffee on the tour, so I've invested in one of those so that we can always have at least a decent espresso when we're traveling around.
Well, it's a communal experience, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you've got to. I mean, it's very important. We didn't have any at the venue yesterday, and I could tell that everyone was disappointed or whatever. But yeah, so that's all going to happen. Today is a kind of day off, and then we're off to Sheffield tomorrow. Last night was great fun, actually. It was really good to get out on tour again, to be started again. But so today is the day that we kind of organise, because we're going to be away for 5 weeks. I've got to organise all my clothes and,
wow,
the stuff that I'm taking with me and the coffee.
5 weeks. What was the longest? What was the longest tour you did? Do you think?
Oh, we've been out for a couple of months, 2.5 months before, but this is the longest one we've done in a while.
Yeah,
because of the pandemic, we've been unable to do anything really other than. And when this album came out last year, Endless Arcade, we did like 4 or 5 shows around the release, but that was all we could do because of the situation,
Mm-hmm.
So now we can actually get out there and properly tour the album a year later than we should have done, but at least we're getting to do it,
Do you have a bit of like a personal journey when you're going away for over a couple of weeks? I mean, where it'll be maybe the first week or two go, quickly or slowly, and then you kind of get into a rhythm. Is there a kind of repetitive? No, for sure you do.
There? Yeah, you do. Actually, it's really. I mean, I really enjoy it. You do get into that kind of rhythm and the routine of I guess sound checking, performance. Yeah. Back to the hotel, maybe go out for a drink somewhere or whatever. Then up the next morning, breakfast, drive to the next venue. But I do enjoy it, and you're getting to visit interesting places. We're going all over the UK and Europe on this tour, so we'll be in lots of nice cities. So I think now I like to maybe try and get out and explore a little bit. For example, when we're in London, I want to go and see the oh no, I've forgotten his name. He builds these automatons. These I think it's called Novelty Devices is the place, and he's got all these amazing machines. Tim. Oh, I've forgotten his second name. It's a bit early. I wish I could remember. But anyway, so I want to go and visit that. He has a sort of shop where these machines are on display, and I want to go and have a look at that this time. So I sometimes try to write in little things in my diary that I'm going to try and do. So,
if I could give you a tip, there's a place in Rotherhithe, which is just south of the river, on sort of one of the overground lines. So, sort of central London, basically, still in Zone 1, but just south of the river. And it's the Brunel Museum, and it's less of a museum than a sort of cavernous place. Have you heard of it?
Do you know, I haven't actually, but that sounds like something that I would love to go and see.
The thing that really captured our imagination was this was the sort of one of the first sort of trailblazers people to sort of dig beneath a river for a tunnel, and the kind of method that he used is what a worm does, which is kind of go down and uses its waste excrement and kind of use that as a supporting barrel to carry on going through. So that's what they did, incredible. Building beneath the Thames. I love that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I love that kind of stuff. So that should definitely see if I can go and see that as well. but no, you do get into a routine, and and you also, I think there's a thing that I really enjoy. So last night, it was really a lot of fun, but you're kind of still really thinking about what you're doing. There are certain songs where you're kind of you're kind of trying to anticipate what the next chord is, because sometimes you're kind of not quite sure, or what the next line is. But you get after 3 or 4 days on the road, you get to this point where muscle memory kicks in, and you can be sort of you're just really not thinking about the performance part of it at all, and you can really, I don't know, I sometimes find myself looking around the venue, and I'll look up and think to myself, that's a really unusual light fitting over there while I'm singing and performing, because you can get, and I really like when you get to that stage, because you usually means that you're playing really well,
What do they call it? Do they call it hand or mind hand, when you're sort of looking at your hand and you're like, I've done this 100 times, but for some reason it looks different or it feels different.
Yeah, it does. But like at the start of a tour, you kind of, there's still a bit of confusion there. You sometimes think, well, where do I go next? You tend to always get there, but you find yourself looking at your hands and think, okay, where is that going now? Oh, yep, there it is. And your fingers will just go to the chord. So, but anyway, it's all good. It's all really good fun. It's just great to be able to, be out touring again.
Brilliant. And this is the podcast about jobs that the bands do. A lot of the groups I speak to in that period of, they've done a couple of tours, they maybe got an agent, or they've started touring more regularly, and it's that sort of that tipping point of where the music sort of overtakes the other work, where that would be a PAYE sort of job. Obviously I'm never going to waste up an opportunity to interview you or bands who have been going a long time, and I think what I've realized is that or at least what I've gleaned is that it never just gets to a point where it's like, okay, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like there's always kind of new work. There's always something new. There's always a kind of new way to look at what you're doing,
Yeah, sure.
Is that true?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. In terms of being creative musically, or what you do, or
like a regular, like a regular, like this. We play music, and we can, that's our job now, and that's what we do, and that's the primary focus.
Sure. Yeah, there comes a moment. I don't think you really even notice it, but then you wake up one day and you think, well, actually, this is what I do for a living. This I can say this is my job. Although it doesn't feel like a job.
We're so ingrained as an early age. It's like a job is something that you sort of begrudge.
You shouldn't enjoy. You should be a slog. And of course, lots of people really do enjoy their jobs, and there's lots of interesting things that people do. But yeah, I think it's people say to me, well, what are your hobbies outside of or your interests outside of the band? And I always, when I think about it, I would say, well, I like guitars, and I like buying records. and and I like listening. So all my hobbies and are things that I outside of things that I enjoy outside of being in the band are musical things, things that are related to being in a band. Mm-hmm. So it is a dream job in that sense, and it doesn't feel like a job, although it is a job. You're away from home for large periods of time. There is work involved in rehearsal and memorizing things, and there's so it is work. But like I say, we derive a great deal of pleasure from the work that we do, so it's great. I mean, I suppose in the way what you're doing podcasting, and that this is kind of like your job in a way too. I suppose do you know what I mean?
Totally.
And I'm sure you enjoy it. You talking to people, and I don't know, whatever. It's so it's great to do something that you enjoy. But I mean, I've had. Sorry, I've had various jobs in the past, but nothing. Because I think when the band had some success when we were pretty young. I mean, I started touring actually when I was about 21. Which maybe isn't that young these days, but in terms of bands. But I got asked. I was working at the YMCA in Bellsill, and I had. I think my dole money was going to get stopped, and I had to, I can't remember what the scheme was called, but you had to sort of go and pick one of these jobs. So I ended up working with the YMCA, and it was interesting. I mean, I wasn't a Christian. It was just that they had the sort of community workers, a group of community workers there, and I was there. So working with people with learning disabilities and I mean, really all sorts of things, outreach things for working with elderly people in the community, and jobs that I probably wasn't even qualified for, going into old people's homes and making sure that they, maybe they had like a dodgy sort of plug, and so, wall outlet, plug socket, or whatever, and, fixing that fixing those kind of things for people. Probably, I mean, I wasn't an electrician, so I wasn't qualified to do that. But it's all just kind of random sort of stuff like that. But at the same time, it allowed me to go and, play with the bands. And I went on tour at the age of 21 with the Pastels. That was the first sort of touring experience I had. And then after that, I didn't really work any jobs other than, being in the band, because Teenage Fanclub happened very soon after that.
You were playing guitar in the Pastels, or helping them?
What happened was I played bass. They were touring their Up for a Bit album, and Martin, who played bass, had actually couldn't do the tour because he had to work. He had a job, and so Stephen called me and asked me if I could step in, in place of him for the tour, and I did, and it was great fun. We toured all over Europe. And it was the first time I toured anywhere at all, actually.
Do you feel like you did? Did you learn a lot on that tour about how to kind of, do it well and sort of be organized and, have fun, but do it in that sense where you're like, you're looking after yourselves and you're making sure that it's
sure. Yeah, I mean, I learned to. Certainly learned to have fun. I was 21, so it was and I guess when you're young, it's pretty easy doing that kind of thing. You're pretty happy to rough it or whatever, But it wasn't like that. We had, we always had somewhere to stay. There was always accommodation and touring in Europe too. That was the amazing thing. You show up at venues in mainland Europe or whatever, and you go in for the sound check, and there'll be like coffee and really nice sandwiches, and which is the kind of thing you never, certainly in the past, you wouldn't get in the UK. I mean, it's kind of changed now, but there would always be food, and so it was a great experience. And plus, we were getting to visit these amazing places that I'd never seen before, Berlin and Paris, and just incredible. I hadn't really been out of the UK at all before that. So, and Amsterdam, that was amazing. I remember walking into the Melkweg, the Milky Way. That was the first show we did in the Netherlands, the first show I'd played in the Netherlands. And we walk in there. I remember walk through the main entrance, and there's this guy, and he sort of looks a bit like Lawrence of Arabia, with the sort of, the Arab sort of dress or whatever, traditional dress. And he had a really big, sort of long, thick beard, and he had a coat hanger on his head, and he was kind of just nicking about there, a bit stoned or whatever, and that was wow. Here we go, Amsterdam.
Brilliant.
But it was great fun, really, really good fun.
Stephen Pastel strikes me as someone who's, taken their interest and kind of really, made it their job. Was there?
Yeah.
Obviously, there's BMX Bandits. There was lots of other bands that you were in and around, and it seemed like a really nice friend group in Bells Hill and Glasgow. Yeah. Do you think you were sort of there was that kind of mentality or that enjoyment of trying to make your art, trying to make your music, the main thing?
Yeah, absolutely. That was the main objective. It wasn't about, you would like to be successful. You'd like people to hear your music, but it was more about making the music. That was what was the important thing. I think an amazing thing, and I know this is about work and jobs, is and I think this is great, is that Stephen Pastel, he's a qualified librarian. That's what he did in the early days of the Pastels, and he's gone on. And the Pastels are obviously still going. They don't put out music as often as they did in the past, but they still do. But Stephen now has monorail records, and I think that librarian's the perfect person to sort of run a record shop because it's all about cataloging and
Yeah. Has there been anything that you'd want to do? Is there any kind of interest that you'd want to study or have done at some point over the last?
Well, I suppose. Things that I've done, again, they're kind of music related things, but they've sort of been hobbies that are sort of hobbies that you could potentially turn into, something that you could earn a living from. I got into, because I couldn't afford high-end mic preamps, although I really like high-end mic preamps and microphones, I got into this sort of DIY, pardon me, community, or I've had some interest in that. And I built, so there are these forums online where people have done things like they've reverse engineered the bus compressor on an SSL desk, which is kind of a revered legendary compressor that, people say it's the glue that makes things sound like a record. So I found this website, and, I hadn't really done any electronics at all before this. But these people were making PCBs. They reverse engineered the compressor, and you could buy PCBs from them. And then you would have to go out and source all of the parts. But they have a thing called the BOM, right, which is the bill of materials. And they would have a list of those. And then so you would go to these electronic wholesalers, buy all the components, and then you would solder them all together. And then they would have links to places where you could buy, the case to house your compressor. So I got into that, and I built 2 SSL bus compressors, and I gave one of them actually to Chemical Underground, Chem 19, the studio, Chemical Underground studio. Paul Savage uses that still, I think, to this day on records. So I got into that, and I was thinking, you can get into building effects pedals and all sorts of stuff, and at one point I thought, well, that could be good fun doing that, but so anyway, I've got, that's a thing I got interested in. I suppose I could have potentially turned that into a job, but I didn't.
I mean, you sort of self-produced quite a lot of records at this point. Is production and like engineering, I mean, obviously engineering, sure, that side of it, what you just said about.
Yeah, I've done a bit of that. What I've made out of, produced a few albums. It's something I enjoy, working with other people. I guess because I have got some experience in working in the studio in terms of, well, I suppose predominantly, recording in the very basic sense of, choosing a good microphone to go with an amplifier and getting a good signal path. But then also, I mean, I tend to think that the bands have the best ideas. I think I'm not really into the idea of a producer coming in and deconstructing a song and rebuilding it and saying, oh yeah, you need to have a chorus there, or you need to have a verse there. I think for writers, whatever, if they come up with an idea and they like the way it sounds or whatever, and they like the structure, then it's right,
Yeah.
But it's lots of fun. It's great fun working with creative people, and when you don't have to sort of like come up with any lyrics or melodic ideas, when you can just kind of help them get a good performance or whatever. It's a lot of fun.
There's a bit of a debate now, and I don't really buy into it. I don't really care. But there's that debate, Noel Gallagher is sort of pointing fingers and saying, if you're co-writing, then you're not really an artist. And I know Damon. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, that's Brian Wilson and Tony Asher wrote God Only Knows. I think that ain't a bad collaboration there.
No, absolutely not. If it's a good record, it's a good record.
Yeah, totally. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's you do. I mean, I remember being at the Ivor Novello's one year, and I think James Blunt, who I've known some people who work with James Blunt. He's meant to be a really good guy, actually. But there was I think it was for the what's the big hit that he had? Of course,
You're Beautiful.
Yeah, that one, yeah. And I think there were 4 or 5 writers on that, but
right.
It was successful and people like it. So, I mean, I'm not going to knock anyone in terms of, certainly not any other musicians, It's like, it's hard enough, without a fellow musician slagging you off,
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
But I think, whatever. If 2 people write a song, if 5 people write a song, it doesn't really matter, does it,
No, I think that idea of collaboration and not having like a really set in stone lineup seems to make a lot of sense in the kind of, it seems to make a lot of sense now when,
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting thing, actually, the collaboration, because it's funny because, I suppose Noel Gallagher writes on his own, Ed Sheeran writes with a team of people. I tend to write my own, but I've written with other people in the past, and it's actually, I mean, I can like the idea of doing that,
Yeah.
2 people sort of knocking their heads together to try and come up with an idea. I've done that a few times myself, and Eros Childs, who plays with the Teenage Fanclub now as well. We had an album. We had a band called Johnny, and we made an album together. And we, quite a few of the songs on there were written collaboratively. We would just sit down. I think Eros was up in Glasgow staying with me, and I just sat down with the guitar. He was at the piano, and we just kind of bashed out a lyric. And it was really good fun, because I think sometimes you can get writer's block working on your own. You sometimes find it difficult to get a lyrical idea that will go with the musical idea that you have. So having someone there who might say, "Why don't you try that?" It's not a bad thing. And in fact, we were talking about this last night. We were talking about the Get Back movie, the Beatles thing, which is sensationally good.
Yeah.
But there's a point, and I can't even remember the song, but they're working on something, and Paul McCartney's working out some lyric ideas, and Mal Evans is sort of chipping in,
Yeah.
and maybe Ringo's chipping in an idea, and he's not precious about it. He's like, "Oh yeah, that's good, yeah," and he's kind of using their suggestions in the lyric. I think it's brilliant. It's great that he's sort of not precious or uptight about it. He's not saying, "This is my song and therefore I've got to write every part of it." And they're collaborative. They're being collaborative. They're musically collaborative too. It's brilliant. It's great to see. In fact, for me, that's the best thing about making music. I really enjoy writing songs. It's difficult to write songs, to get something that you're happy with, that you think's sort of cohesive or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But when you take that song and start working out with a band, or with Teenage Fanclub with the band, that's where my favourite part of it. Because I think maybe in the past when I was younger, I might have been a bit more directorial. I might think of, I've got all this idea in my head and how it should, how this song should, how we should, what the arrangement should be. But now I like to just take in the song and I'll play the song, and everyone will just play what they feel fits, and that usually works best.
Yeah, of course, Teenage Fanclub has kind of been, all of you have been sort of songwriters over the years at points. From what I've read, did you have much pressure as sort of being sort of labeled the front person or the kind of the singer? And have you?
Oh well, yeah, no, I don't think so. I mean, I think I play guitar and I'm singing a lot of the songs, and so that I kind of somehow ended up standing in the middle there, and I ended up, not that I'm sort of always talking between songs, but I'd normally be the person that would communicate with the audience, and I kind of just fell into that role. But we are absolutely, democratic in the way that we're as much as possible. I think in the way that we kind of try to share everything. It is a band of equals in that sense. I think that's why, and we've never really had ego issues at all. We all go on pretty well. I don't think we would do it if it was, that's not our style at all.
Mm-hmm.
You always hear stories about Mick Jagger and Keith Richards being, each other's throats, and we wouldn't function at all well in that kind of scenario. We like to have a kind of harmonious state. So there's it's always pretty easy, and but that's just the way that this group of individuals works. And other people will work differently, but this is works for us.
It's different for bands now trying to be on the road all the time. Forget about COVID. Before COVID, because support fees have just stayed at 50 quid seemingly for the last 50 years.
For sure.
And it seems a lot different, and just a totally kind of, if you've got a record and you've got an independent label behind you, and then you're lucky enough to meet some people and make some friends in booking agents or other bands that can take you on tour. Even then, making that kind of snakes and ladders up to kind of playing music, you're kind of more or less full-time thing. It's so different.
It's really difficult. I tell you what, for young bands especially, because what it's difficult. Well, no one sells records anymore. There's other than a very small group of people, Ed Sheeran, people like that, which is fine. But so you need money to make records, okay? Because you have to get a studio. You can only do so much at home. You need to get into a studio. It's going to cost you a few grand doing that. But then you put that record out, and you kind of the only place to make any money is from touring, but the problem you have there is that people have to get time off work, so trying to coordinate that with 4 or 5 people is really difficult. Plus when you tour, the fees are okay, and when you get to a certain level you can do it reasonably well, but if you're a kind of new band, your fees won't be that great, so you've got to factor in accommodation, a van, you've got a tour manager because you need someone to do all of that other stuff for you. Fuel now is going to be an absolute nightmare for people getting around the country because it's going to be really expensive. But then, like I say, getting time off work and coordinating that is really difficult. So it's just getting harder and harder. And then another area you can make some money, where you can make some money is merchandise. So that's become a bigger thing. And there's more of a thing where people will come off stage and then you have the performance there, but then you'll go out and you'll stand for an hour at the merch table and talk to people, and that's just what you have to do now. To sort of make the tour work. Is
there an easy solution with the because independent venues are struggling, and presumably promoters are also kind of going down with that a little bit, so just asking for 200 instead of 50, that seems like not even really sort of possible.
You would think so, but promoters are really up against it too, especially post-pandemic or whatever. I mean, it is amazing though that people are still coming out to shows. Though it's the public who are making it still work. And I think people are conscious that because tickets are a bit more expensive now, merch is more expensive, and probably more expensive than it should be. But the reason for that is that it's really just people trying to make their tour work. You just need to make a bit of extra money somewhere, and people are, through the generosity of people being prepared to accept that and spend a bit more money in the ticket and buy a bit of merch when they're at the show, is why it still kind of works. If the streaming thing can be fixed, if people are sort of paid more in terms of for each stream or whatever, that might help a bit, but beyond that, it's just, I think we're just in a situation where it's just difficult.
Yeah. Are there any moments in your career, would you call it your career?
I don't think about it as a career, but I suppose it is. It's been 30 some years now, so it's all I've done, and it's I suppose it is a job. That's what I've got on my passport, musician. So I suppose it is a career. But yeah.
Are there any moments in that time that really stick out for you, like any kind of stories or days or scenarios where?
I mean, yeah. Sorry.
No. You go. When I was just about to say when you kind of realised, this is it. This is it. Things have, there has been that shift.
Which, I mean, lots of different moments. I suppose we've been lucky in that we've gotten to. For me, highlights have been being around a couple of phenomena. Really, we toured with Nirvana on the European leg of the Nevermind tour, and it was amazing sort of witnessing that, because you kind of really sensed that it was something special, and they were great, and they're really nice people, and it was at the very start of their fame, and we sort of got to know them pretty well, and that was exciting to witness that and sort of be. Like I say, we were on the periphery of it, but we were still there, And then also we toured with Radiohead in America on the OK Computer tour. We were playing pretty small theaters, and
wow.
again that was great. And that because that album was a real phenomena for them as well. I think that was one that took them up onto a different level. And again, the experience of spending time with them as people, because again they're really good guys, and their whole thing was really cool. That was great fun. But really, and other than that, meeting musicians around the world, meeting people, going to Japan, going to Australia, visiting, all of these different places that I probably, it's a fair chance I would never have had the opportunity to go to. That's all been amazing. So we've been lucky in that sense. It's great. It's been, and I think, but ultimately, getting to do as your job the thing that you really enjoy, and that's the best thing about it.
Nirvana and Radiohead are, two brilliant examples of bands who have just been themselves the whole time through their records. As a journalist, I've always loved reading, music magazines, and there's just always, maybe this is a bit cynical, but it seems that there are tropes. There are those classic tropes where, bands will start off being completely themselves, and then at some point you kind of glean that maybe they're kind of appeasing people around them. Maybe they're appeasing their fans. Maybe it's their label. Maybe it's they think they're doing the. Of course, you probably think you're doing the right thing all the time.
Yeah, it's funny because I always think it should work the other way around. I mean, and it did for me, because I think when you're young, no musician or artist their eyes fully formed. Initially you're the sum of your influences. There are things that you like. So when I was young, I liked Sonic Youth, and I liked Exile on Main Street and whatever, and I liked Love. And so the music that I was making was informed by those things, and more directly than or very directly in a way. Would take the kind of shape and form of Sonic Youth and try and marry that to sort of melodies that were like the Arthur Lee's melodies or something like that. And so everyone does that initially, and then after a while you sort of start to form your own sound. You've certain things that you do as a group of people, certain shapes, structures, keys, whatever, lyrical ideas. And then after a certain amount of time, you sort of develop your own sort of sound. And that's the thing that's that is probably most appealing to people in a way. I think the idiosyncratic nature of that. Someone like Pixies or whatever, I mean, they're a pretty idiosyncratic band and very influential band, but they kind of arrived at that sound because Charles or Black Francis or whatever had a certain way of writing songs, and Kim stylistically the certain way of playing bass, and then the combination of their voices created something too. So but that's what makes them attractive to people, the idiosyncratic thing.
Yeah, it's almost like a stubbornness.
Yeah, I think if you try to emulate and copy people, then people can see through that, and it's not you really, So it's never quite as good, the sort of pastiche of another artist, and it can't be satisfying either. I mean, I know some people like to write that way, in a plagiaristic way, that they might take an element of one song and an element from another song, blend those together and come up with their own thing. But I would never intentionally do that. I'm sure I've lifted ideas from other people. I mean, I can give you an example of that. Actually, there's a song of ours called "Everything Flows."
Yeah.
And I remember, I wrote that a long time ago, 30 some years ago. And then I remember, one day listening to Glass Onion and hearing the line, the place where everything flows. And I thought, oh, right, I lifted that from there. I did it subconsciously. I had no idea that I'd done that. So that's fine. But the idea of going and thinking, I'll take that verse and I'll take that chorus from this other song and put those together, that to me would be really unsatisfying.
So. Norman, thanks so much for being up for this.
Oh, no problem at all.
Love the chat. I love
that. No worries. I'll go off and organise my coffee. I think I still need some more at the moment. Great.
I left the light on. Sounds brilliant. And
thanks. We played it last night actually for the first time, and it was good fun playing it.
What's it like getting behind the keys?
Well, I didn't do that. Eros is playing keys, and I just, I wimped out and stuck to the acoustic guitar. And then we got a friend, Stuart Kidd, to come on and played a We've got a mellotron sort of thing. So he played mellotron strings. And our other friend, John McCusker, who actually played the string part on the recording, he was in Glasgow too, and he came on stage with us too. So there were 7 of us on stage. I think that's the most people that we've had on stage at any one time. Breaking new ground.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, and have a great tour.
Thanks, it was nice chatting with you.
You too.
All the best. Cheers.
Thank you, mate.
Bye-bye.
See you. So there was Norman Blake in a wholly unedited episode of 101 Part-Time Jobs. You can catch Teenage Fanclub on tour for the rest of the month. Head to teenagefanclub.com to find all those dates. See you later this week with an episode with Cardiff's Buzzard, Buzzard, Buzzard. See you then.
I've been working all day for me mate on the side, running around like a blue-ass fly. I've been working all day for me mate. Every bleeding minute I've been on the go, up and down the ladder like a fiddler's elbow. I've been working all day for me mate.
This is a Mighty Moon Media podcast.